Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Martha. So I'll begin right away. Welcome, guys. This is the Love Abilities, Invisible Disabilities panel, and we have people from all over the world. I'm great. I'm very grateful for that. So, invisible disabilities are basically, disabilities that cannot be seen as quickly, and we will learn more about this later on. And in this type of panel, we encourage a conversation, okay, a conversation between me and the panelists, among the panelists themselves, and even including the audience. So, the audience, you're encouraged to chime in on the discussion, whether you want to type or you want to unmute, to ask questions or make comments. That's completely fine, okay? So the panelists are pretty flexible when it comes to that. And you know what? Let's make this an easy and a friendly conversation. Okay, we could use a lot more of that nowadays. Okay, so let me introduce my very wonderful panelists who I have the opportunity to meet over the pandemic. Okay, so here I have Katie, Sarah. Okay, and I'll put her details here in the chat box. Here you go. Just in case you want to view it later. Okay, so Katie believes that every human being has gifts to share and that our self-acceptance ripples out to support care with others. She says, and I quote when we first met, we are all the same under skin, as humans, and we have a special responsibility in this planet. Okay, she follows these guiding questions. Is this a win-win or does it create harmony? Is there a price for my pleasure that I am that is worth gaining? We can't ignore caring for people, animals, and the planet anymore. And she would like to promote her sexological bodywork training. This is a somatic sex education, and for the first time, it's available to people of any ability because it's online and it's about self practice. Okay, and she would also like to promote bodypoem.co.co. And this is training that's exactly for invisible disabilities or, the censored and the forbidden parts of ourselves. So, Katie, as a warm up question, I guess, can you explain to us alexithymia?
Hi, thank you, JOYEN.
You're welcome.
Yes, so alexithymia literally means the inability to access feeling states in the body and find some kind of symbol language to communicate those feeling states with another, or even to acknowledge them in self-reflective practice. And as human beings, as we get more into stressful, busy, sympathetic nervous system lives, it's a global pandemic. In fact, it applies to most of us. These times when we just don't have access to knowing what we're feeling. And the problem that then poses for us in intimacy and with all decision making is that if we don't have a sense of what's happening in our bodies, if we don't have inner guides, which is our gut reaction to something or our heart reaction to something, if we are disconnected from our body's wisdom, then the decisions we are likely to make are going to be decisions that are based in projection from what's happened before, which is a bit like living in a hologram. And those kind of decisions can take human beings into disconnection from care. And I feel that so much of the planet is in a massive crisis of a disconnection from care. And the irony of the coronavirus is that it's bringing that into awareness, bringing self-care and caring for each other into awareness. And body poem as a practice I developed to support people accessing what gets censored by our minds in service of belonging, because we all need to belong. And so we censor aspects of ourselves that might jeopardize our safety and belonging. And body poem's a way of accessing feeling states, bypassing the self-protection mechanisms. And then that brings us, it's like being able to interpret your dreams. It's like having hindsight before you've taken action. And it's a way of coming into acceptance. Primarily, it's a way of coming into acceptance with all aspects of ourselves, without hierarchically judging one aspect of me is better than another aspect of me. It's a way of horizontalizing all the different aspects of ourselves, and in that process acceptance is possible, and in that process, as part of acceptance, we could be kinder with ourselves, and then that can ripple out into our relationships, and we're more informed with the decisions we're making.
Thank you very much, Katie. So while I was talking to Katie, and as you guys are perhaps listening, as everyone is listening to her, it's really about going back to the basics nowadays, relearning how to love ourselves and accept ourselves, even the dark parts, right? More on that later. Thank you very much, Katie. Okay, so next up on this wonderful panel is Tania, and I'll put her details here in the chat box also. There you go. That's Tania right there. So Tania, she is passionate about all things sexual health, reproductive health, and HIV. And she is a full-time HIV health educator working for a major hospital system in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. She has her master's degree in reproductive biology from the Johns Hopkins University. And Tania is actually one of the co-founders of South Asian Sexual and Mental Health Alliance. I put it there in the chat box, the website also, which creates a dialogue pretty much similar to what we're doing in this festival around sexual and reproductive health, HIV, mental health, third culture, LGBTQ plus issues, and more in the South Asian diaspora. And on the side also, Tania takes wonderful photographs, and I link that here also. That's drishti-photos.com in case you guys want to look at it. So, Tania, can you tell us about your experience in the South Asian diaspora and related to this festival?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. SASMA was born out of this need because we don't talk about sex, we don't talk about mental health, we don't talk about all those like taboo topics that we are living in day to day. And for me, I'm 30, but I was born in India, but I moved to the US when I was 10. So I've had, the majority of my formative years here balancing those two cultures. And all of my peers, all of my contemporaries have had that same struggle of, our parents are sort of stuck in the time that they came in the 1980s, 90s, and we've kind of, moved forward and had to balance those two cultures. So, and found that there is not really a dedicated space to talk about all the issues that we go through, right? If you think about expectations around love and education, and there's just so many other things, and it creates mental health issues. It creates not being able to be your full sexual self, right? It creates issues around consent. There's just so many things to talk about. So that's where SASMA was born out of. And for me, it's been a great bridge between kind of like what I see as my professional life, working in the realm of HIV and sexual health, and my personal life, living between two cultures and trying to get the best of both worlds. And the great thing about SASMA has been that for a long time, my parents, my mom especially, was kind of like, oh, reproductive health, sexual health, like, that's a very non-Indian thing to pursue. So she would tell people, oh, Tania does like women's health. She does, she would never say sexual health. And then now years later, 5, 6 years later, she's very proud of SASMA, all the work that we do, and she's able to tell people, yeah, Tania works in sexual health. And so it's been a great bridge for a lot of different aspects of my life. So excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Tania. I mean, from one woman of color to another, this is such an interesting topic because sexual health and mental health, we never speak about that in Asia. We never speak about it. So now I'm very glad to have you here to talk about more of that later. Thank you. Okay, so next up on our panel. Oh, and this person is super duper interesting. I'll put her details in the chat box also. Okay, so this is Nellie. And Nellie is an avid student and practitioner of facilitation, communication, and consent for over 12 years. Okay, and they draw from their background in massage therapy, sex education, sexological bodywork, master's degree in integrative health and wellness coaching from the California Institute of Integral Studies. This one, Cuddlist and Cuddle Party Facilitator certifications, and is currently training to be a Wheel of Consent facilitator. She has been living with a chronic illness for over 15 years, and she also runs support group for people with chronic illnesses such as these. So, Nellie, can you tell us more about this specific kind of chronic illness and the groups that you manage?
Sure. I'm really happy to get to be a part of this. I've been living with chronic illness that went undiagnosed for a long time, as unfortunately many invisible illnesses tends to happen. And I finally got a diagnosis of fibromyalgia with chronic fatigue syndrome as kind of a secondary diagnosis. And part of my work, both kind of in the past, is doing work with sexological body work. My current work in working as a cuddlist and cuddle party facilitator, and doing Wheel of Consent work is that I think it's really important for those of us living with chronic illnesses to have spaces where we get to have embodied experiences, where we get to have the sort of support that allows us to explore what feels good and what we're a yes to, being able to say no to things that are not working for us. And then I also hold monthly support groups for people with chronic illness, and having spaces where people can come together who have the shared experience, especially with invisible illnesses, of, people saying, oh, but you look fine, like, and just having that superficial, like, image and getting unsolicited advice from people, and it's like, nope, like, we don't want that. So being able to create a safe space for people to talk about their experiences, celebrate wins, talk about the difficulties that are going on, have been important parts of my work, and have benefited me personally as well. And I'll just say that I've got a headache going on today, so if I'm a little inarticulate, that's what's going on. But I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Nellie, and thank you so much for coming despite all of the pain. You know, it's people like you who are inspiring, especially at this day and age. We have a comment actually in the chat box talking about the power of touch and how it's so important nowadays and relevant because of of course, the pandemic, and how, it's important when retaining our humanity, basically. So more on that later also. And thank you again for being here. Okay, so last but not the least, let me put his name. Ooh, you have an "I love you so much, Nelly" in the chat box. There you go. Okay, so last but not the least. Okay, there you go. So here in the chat box, this is Daniel, or the Aspie World. You can refer to him as either. And he is an international best-selling author and video influencer with an award-winning YouTube channel called The Aspie World. So if you guys want to check it out after. And it's the biggest YouTube channel dedicated to autism from an autistic person's point of view. So someone telling their own story, basically. And this channel is dedicated to autism awareness and understanding from an autistic person's point of view. Now, creating engagement with real people to create real change in a positive, uplifting way. This is what this channel is all about. And it helps raise money for charities like the National Autistic Society. And Daniel has has a course here, learnautism.net, that he would like to promote, and of course his website there. Daniel, can you talk to us about learnautism.net?
Hey, thanks, Joanne. Yeah. I mean, everybody here has been amazing and informative and talking a lot about sex and stuff. My channel primarily isn't talking about sex, but it's something that does come up because there's a big taboo about like, do autistic people have sex and all this nonsense bogus. Obviously, of course they have sex. But in terms of what I'm doing with learnautism.net is I'm creating a course for people who are either on the autism spectrum or are parents of people on the autism spectrum / carers. So I could actually create a course that will take them from where they currently are to learning pretty much everything they need to know about how to deal with daily life skills for parents and dealing with stuff. And even in your own kind of life, if you're an autistic person in your own life, you can learn more about how to best deal with your life and those tips and tricks that I've kind of developed over the past 34 years of living with a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. So it's a very interesting course. And just want to say, like, if anybody does want to actually interested in the course, I'm doing like a free presentation on it, but the website is actually learnautism.net /webreg, which is a slightly different URL, just so that you get like the sign up page rather than like the front page. Anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of basically what I'm about. And pretty interestingly enough, recently I did a video about autism and sex, because there was a big issue where people didn't know autistic people A, enjoyed sex, and B, have sex. So yeah, I'm interested to be on this panel about that.
Yeah, so the really great thing about Daniel is he's giving a voice to the people who are often underrepresented, and he's also open to talking about sex and relationships, which is also a difficult topic, I guess, when it comes to reconciling it with disability. So this super cool, super informative panel now officially begins. Okay, so thank you guys. Okay, let's see. I think I saw a question here addressed to Nellie to start off. From Rachel, is there a link to the monthly groups, Nellie, and are those open for more participants? Thank you.
So right now the groups that I'm running are specific to where I live in Western Massachusetts. But if you go to my personal website, which is, and I'll type it in the chat box as soon as we're done, but it's nelliewilson.com, and you can get the link to different support groups and things like that and be in touch with me. Certainly if there's enough interest out of like this or anything else, I'd be happy to see about expanding my support group offerings.
There you go. So I hope that answered your question, Rachel. There you go. Thank you. And we have a comment from a fellow panelist. I've seen Cuddlist. Very cool job. Yes, that's right. Okay, I guess so. To kick off, thank you very much, esteemed panelists, for that intro. To kick off, and anyone can answer this, whether from the panel or from the audience. My favorite question: how are disability and humanity related?
I can take a stab at it. I think so, Joanne, I know you and I had kind of talked about this question when we met over Skype, Zoom, I forgot what it was. But and so I have this and fibromyalgia. So rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune condition. So your own body, own tissues or immune system attacks your joints. So it's a lot of chronic pain and a lot of chronic inflammation and stuff like that. And especially during COVID, I'm sure you all kind of know, in terms of people that are immunosuppressed, there's a greater risk and everything like that. So it's like now more than ever, it's more apparent than ever that, I'm a little different from maybe my peers or my friends or my family and things like that. But there are so many people around us that have invisible disabilities that we may not know about or be able to name. And, for me, I know a lot of people that meet me who later find out that I have, so, I suffer from all this chronic pain and stuff will say, I would never know by looking at you. And I think it was Nellie who said, like, people just say, you look fine, you're so young, right? But this is reality, and you don't see the bad days and the crappy times that I go through when I'm alone, or when I'm not my like cheery peppy self, and kind of the way I look today, right? I'm like happy, I'm peppy, I'm glad to be here, but I know when I'm done with this panel, I'm going to take a nap because I'm going to be exhausted. So I think it's just really important to recognize that there are people around you that have lots of different things going on, and you never know what people are going through, and they might look fine and they might be totally fine, but underneath it all, they might not be.
Naps are the best, Tanya, and please have all of the naps that you want. And, not just for anything, but it improves our state, our general state as well, and you're right, you never know when something's going on. And actually, Katie and I touched a bit about this when we were talking. What do you think is the best way to approach someone with invisible disabilities?
I guess this is a general approach to any kind of interaction, is to, as much as possible, not assume robustness of another in any situation. And part of us getting to learn about each other is by having experiences together. And sure enough, we might make assumptions about somebody's robustness and resilience to a situation. And if we discover that another person has felt hurt and distressed, emotionally or physically injured by a situation that we've been part of, then repair. The talk that was on earlier about Stephen Porges, he talks about repair being one of the most fundamental acts of humanity that we can do something about when we've got it wrong about somebody, when we haven't understood what another person's going through silently. And many of us are interrupted by hidden upset that takes us offline, takes us out of being agent and being able to negotiate life situations. Yeah, so, and it's hard to not assume. It is hard to not assume, and we all make mistakes with assumptions.
That's right, and that's actually us being human, right? I mean, if I were to share the reason why Katie, this panel resonates with me, for example, is because I come from the Philippines, and I was telling the panelists, in our end of the world, invisible disabilities are non-existent. It's what do you call this? People think that you're just making it up here, or they don't respect it. They just think that you're acting up. So I wanted really to talk to this panel from a learner's perspective, and it all boils down to love, is what I noticed. Okay, so we have someone commenting in the audience from Emily. Yes, thank you, Katie. And my favorite when that is discovered is for someone to ask me, what is that like for you? How does it feel to be in your body in this world? There you go.
Yeah. And they're the questions that I ask anybody who I'm working with. What are you noticing? And what's that like to notice? And what are you noticing takes us into noticing what's happening. And then what's that like to notice is an update for our identity. that this is me. This is an update on who I am right now with what I've noticed. So it's like going into the water and coming onto the beach to reflect, into the water with the body and onto the beach to reflect. And that's the process of body poem, and the process of all the practices in sexological bodywork, and also with Wheel of Consent, Nellie, practices. I'm a Wheel of Consent facilitator and also a cuddle party facilitator, and yay. And it's all about how can we feel more of ourselves, to fear less, so that we can notice and value and voice what matters to us, to share, to come into shared communication. And that way we can co-create the kind of lives that are harmonious for ourselves and each other.
Thank you, Katie. I was actually just about to mention, Nellie, that it sounds very, very similar to the kind of work that Nellie is doing. Would you like to chime in, Nellie? You have anything to add here?
Sure. One of the things that coming back to the question about relationship between disability and humanity, and especially with invisible disabilities, how we're perceived, or assumptions and things like that, is there's a piece of the Welcome Circle in Cuddle Party that talks about not making assumptions, and that some of us who are in this space, maybe we've had a hard day, maybe we've had a hard week, and some of us have had a hard life, and we don't know that. But this is a space where we all get to practice asking for what we want and saying no to the things that we don't want, and that we're encouraged to change our mind. And that's been a really powerful concept for me in both my personal life and in working with people, is that we don't want to make, we have a brain that wants to categorize, that wants to make assumptions about things. But when we can step back from that and be in the question of like, what is going on for this person, and tune into ourselves to sense in like what is feeling good, whether that be what feels good for me to verbally share about myself versus what I want to keep private. What is it that I like as far as touch, sensation, whether that be in a sexual situation, or whether it just be like, I want a hug, and this is how hugs feel really good to me. Versus like, I'm not into this position when it comes to sex, or, like I don't like to be squeezed too tightly with a hug. Like the more we're able to inquire about that and have spaces to explore what is it that actually works for me, the more benefit I think everyone can have in relating with each other and with ourselves.
I think that basically summarizes, the answer for the connection of disability and humanity. It's, there is no difference. It's just a matter of different abilities. We're all humans, and there's a comment here in the chat box that says, if all medical staff learn to ask the question, what is that like for you, it would be a great start to a more productive doctor-patient relationship. But it's not just in the hospital, as what Nellie and Katie and Tania said. It's, just asking that to anyone in general. Asking that first to yourself, and then asking that to other people, right? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we have another, what is this? A comment from Alex in the chat, and I think this is for Daniel. First, thanks. What a brilliant bunch of people. Second, people assume my largest problem is my physical disability. It is a big thing, but my deafness and communication differences are bigger. My autism, though, is what gives me a more unique and creative worldview, and that's at the heart of my art, creativity, and spirituality. Daniel, what do you think about that as someone who connects autism with video art, with videos?
Yeah, I think it's a great comment because I think that people who are neurodivergent, which is the term for anybody on the autism spectrum, is more connected to creativity in many forms. So I'm a multi-musician. So I taught myself to play about I don't know, eight or nine different instruments, and pretty much I love playing music. And to me, it's more of a how can I better create more things. I love creating things, so I make videos and I take pictures and I do I write books, and then I different instruments, and I make music, and all of those things are creative outlets. And I think that in terms of anything that is going on, like before about like knowing if someone with disability or not, I actually get that all the time. It's quite frustrating for anyone on the autism spectrum. I'm sure Alex will kind of understand this, where I do something, I'm playing a show, or I'm doing a video, or I'm doing an interview or a magazine interview, and then they say, oh, you couldn't tell you have Asperger's syndrome. And it's such a kind of an unusual thing to hear. It's horrible to hear, because they don't see the disability, they just see the effort you're doing to put into doing something, and those things are hard, whereas creativity comes quite naturally. So when I'm playing music, when I'm making videos, when I'm doing television shows, or I'm working with the BBC, those things are quite fluid, and I can do those creative aspects. But when I'm, in a line waiting to pick up a prescription in the pharmacist, it might be quite difficult for me to interact with other people around me. So it's quite interesting. I just find that, I definitely can understand wholeheartedly that, autism is kind of like that superpower that gives you a unique kind of creative spin on the world because of the way the autistic brain sees things. And just for an example, and I know I feel like I'm just waffling on, but the way I see things is slightly different. And I never knew this until after I was diagnosed and started learning more about autism, is that when I see lights kind of flicker. So especially fluorescent lighting kind of flickers, has like a flicker. And this is really triggering. So you might see autistic kids doing this a lot, or autistic people doing this a lot. And this is this is cross phasing. They're phasing the light. So the light is flickering as well. And so they do this to stop the phase, so it becomes natural. It becomes like a neutral light then, rather than a flickering. But I didn't realize that not everybody sees that. You see, only people on the autism spectrum see that. So it's quite interesting to see that you are kind of outside of this kind of realm of how you see the world, and that was really impactful. And so I just wanted to add that in as an example of the seeing differently. And there's a term that I use with the people who take my courses and sign up for my membership site, where the slogan is thinking differently daily, and I call everyone different thinkers, because not only do autistic people think differently, but the people who want to join, the parents and the caregivers who want to join and learn, they're starting to think differently. And I think that's really interesting. That tagline is well used, I think. So different thinkers, and power to it.
In line with that, I guess, because this is the Invisible Disabilities panel, and we tend to appear like regular people. I have a follow-up question here, actually, for Daniel, but anyone in the panel can also answer after him. Has anyone ever criticized you for capitalizing on your disability, since it's not as perhaps obvious compared to the rest?
Yeah, I mean, if am I okay to speak right now? Yeah. I get it all the time. People. So I'm a YouTuber. It's like my main thing. So you can see this plaque behind me. This is a plaque having 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, right? So I'm at 138 or 139,000 subscribers on YouTube at the moment. If you compare this to my podcast, I've got 120,000 on my podcast. About 22,000 on Facebook, 20,000 on Instagram, 10,000 on Twitter, and we do a lot of content. And so, me and I push out content every single day, and every time I make a YouTube video that I then create with my team, we create 47 bits of content that go out to all my distribution networks. I've got like 11,000 on LinkedIn as well, and we also have a blog. So there's a lot of content to do, and that content is all free information at the point of use, so they can go there and find that information, use it, and it's good information. It's content that I've created. Now, when you're in the YouTube realm, you get criticized because you have ad revenue that comes through from ads, and then you also have revenue that comes in from sponsors. So I have like a bunch of different people who send me things and say, can you advertise this product if it's how those with my brand and it's in line with what we're doing on my sustain. There's a lot of people, you know, we've got close to like 400,000 people across all of my platforms. To sustain that, I have to have a team and to pay for that team. And for me to do this daily as a daily job.
Hello, Daniel. Daniel, I think you're frozen.
And I'm saying, well, not really. I'm actually, you know, and everyone has to remember when I started doing this, but for 2 years, I put my blood, sweat, and tears into creating the YouTube channel without actually having any action. I don't know, people who ask, you need a little bit more love. You know, there's not such thing as a hater. There's just somebody who needs a little bit of love, because those people, all that anger is something in their life and they're taking it out on you because it's the easiest thing to kind of.
Hello, Daniel. Are you there? Okay. Oh, okay. There he goes. So, what I think everyone got the gist of it. Everyone got the gist of it. Anyway, do I have any further comments from maybe the rest of the panel? Since a lot of us are pretty much out there, you know, we're serving as beacons, but at the same time, you know, there's this tricky line that we straddle with, you know, perhaps capitalizing on our work. Maybe. How about Tanya? Do you have anything to add to that?
I think my story is a little bit different, but mine is from like more of a personal perspective where over the years I've lost friendships and relationships over, you know, having chronic pain. And I don't know if anyone else on this panel has like an autoimmune condition. And I know, Nellie, you have also chronic pain. But for me, my energy ebbs and flows. So I might be having a great day. Tomorrow might be like, okay, can't get out of bed, you know, or it might be a great week. And then suddenly it's raining or it's snowing and, you know, every joint is on fire. So like, it is very unpredictable. It's really hard to keep up with. And then, you know, like JOYEN, when I talked to you that day, I was like, it was a really rough day today. I am so tired, but you know, we still had a great conversation. But like, you know, I told you, I was like, I'm exhausted and I'm going to bed after we're done talking, you know, and today I'll take a nap after this, right? But you know, it ends up amounting sometimes to missing days at work, having a full-time job, and having to be very upfront and say, I can't make it in today. I'm going to have to either work from home or take the day off. And if your supervisor is not accommodating to that, that can create problems, right? And I've been pretty thankful that I've had a pretty good supervisor, but there have been points where, you know, comments have been made and things like that. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, you know? And you have to really like advocate for yourself and push to get things like telework privilege, you know, and say, I'm still productive. It's just like, if you can let me work from home today versus getting dressed and going to the office, I can still get my stuff done and meet your deadlines. But just give me a little something, you know, so I can meet me halfway so I can like finish what I'm here to do, because you know I'm capable. So I think sometimes people do think that maybe you are, you know, capitalizing on that, you know, thing of saying, oh, Tanya is always going on about having RA, or, you know, Tanya is always talking about this and that. I will say I've lost a couple of really great and what I had hoped would be lifelong friendships over this, over things like, you know, missing a 30th birthday party. You know, it's still something that like really like kind of breaks my heart to think about, because I also have really bad back pain. So I had a very surprise surgery last year. So for years before that, you know, I've gone through like every painkiller you can imagine. I've had like nerve ablations and nerve injections and like just like until it got to the point where surgery was the only option for me last summer. So on a good friend's 30th birthday, I missed her, birthday dinner and celebrations because I was like in bed and I couldn't move. And that was the end of that friendship. And that really hurt, over the years, I think the people that have remained close to me have understood. And I think it's funny because when I had my surgery last summer and when it became a not invisible disability at that point, because I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, it was not a routine surgery for me in any way, shape, or form. I think that's when it clicked with a lot of people that like, oh, this is what it's actually like for her. And this is like the degree of pain and suffering. And it's like kind of, come to a head in this particular terrible situation. But like it kind of took like that much bad stuff happening to me for some of the people in my life to really understand the degree of what is every day for me. So that's still kind of like an emotional thing to talk about, but it gets easier over time, and people that stick by you, those are the real people.
Thank you, Tania, for sharing that. I just want to acknowledge that like you're so not alone in having those experiences of, losing friends, losing lovers, over like just not understanding what your lived experience is with having a chronic illness. One of the things I wanted to just add in is that I think one of the big things that comes up for a lot of folks is internalized ableism, and that we live in, so many societies are focused around ability. Certainly in the United States, it's a very capitalistic society. We are focused on productivity and what you can do, and your work, your job basically is an indicator of your self-worth. And if you're not able to do those things, it can have a really detrimental effect on your internal like perception and sense of self. And so even if you don't have people calling into question like your illness, which, I feel like most everyone who has a disability, or especially an invisible disability or an invisible illness, that we have this narrative inside of our head that's saying, oh, but couldn't you really push yourself harder to like do more, to be better? Like you're not working hard enough at taking care of yourself, when it's like, I'm in bed, I'm doing the best I can. And we've got this voice inside of our head that's just like, no, you're not enough, you're not enough. And having that sort of experience internally can have a real impact on our sex lives as well, as like, how we experience ourselves as being sexy, or having desires, so it can be a really tricky thing, and something that I think is really valuable to get some support around, in recognizing like, okay, there is this cultural narrative that is deeply rooted in all of us, and when something happens that we can no longer function in alignment with that narrative, we need to like open up to different possibilities. And I feel like the world would be a much better place, frankly, if we shifted to the value of beingness. So just wanted to add that in.
Thank you so much. And the one thing I'll add, everything in the chat, Nellie, what you said very much resonated. And so I'm, Indian, and um, my parents, my family, were kind of like that stereotypical, like really high achieving, really high expectations, right? And I've always grown up kind of in that space of like, do more, do more, do more. And, unfortunately in our community, a lot of people live by the what will people say, and that your life is, not your own, but it's like how people perceive you. And that's the important part rather than your lived reality or like what your experiences are. And for me, it's been a lot of unlearning and learning to say no and saying, you know what, no, I'm not gonna, take on this other project because it'll make me look good in the community, which is kind of like what honestly my parents live by, what a lot of people live by, that like more exposure, more like, oh, we want that auntie to see you and to. And I was like, everyone already knows what I do. Everyone already knows what I've achieved. Everyone knows me in the community for years. They know my strengths. There is really nothing more for me to give or for me to prove, at this point, I have to say no, because I can't, my body just can't keep up anymore. And it's been, it's been a difficult journey, even with my own parents, with my mom, and especially like that, because and I understand, like, as a mother, maybe she wants to see me always flourish, but I was like, flourishing doesn't always mean being productive 24/7. Like, flourish can mean watching Netflix for an entire evening because I'm freaking tired and I need like a day off from everybody and everything. Like, that is just as productive as, doing a project or like completing a new dance choreography or whatever it is. And I do so many creative things, but I was like, I have to take breaks and pace myself because you're going to burn out otherwise. And that's that, that mixed with capitalism is just like a bad combination. So it's hard to like unlearn all of that stuff, but it's definitely a process.
Why is it that we live in a society that doesn't consider rest and self-love as part of the work? You need that to be able to work. You take breaks during work, right? So why shouldn't we in life? Hey, Katie, do you have anything else to add before we take a quick Q&A break?
Yeah, just on the subject of capitalizing on what is our disability, I'm just thinking about, if I was in a situation experiencing chronic pain, I would want to come and see you, Tania, and you, Nellie, because of your compassion and your felt understanding of the impact that that has on everyday life, and being part of society and performing or not performing, and all of the identity aspects of that and the belonging aspects of that and the dilemmas of that. And we all have gifts to share, and I feel very passionate about training practitioners to capitalize on their disability, if you like, capitalize on what they have suffered with, what they have come through, what they have, how have they found their way through to where they are right now, and how that can then become a gift to share with others, which is capitalizing on disability, because then it's a service that you're offering, but you're offering it from authenticity. It's and it is a gift, and it has a value to it. Your compassion and understanding with a particular aspect of being human is valuable for somebody else to come out of loneliness with what they're suffering with. That's what that's my addition to capitalizing on disability.
Thank you, Katie. This is a lot. This is actually a lot for me. I mean, this is from a learner, from an Asian learner's perspective, and just listening to you guys, I'm filled with so many questions and so many realizations. But let's take a quick break to maybe ask the audience if anyone wants to unmute themselves. If you guys have any questions, or if you want to type it out, please do so now. Hey. Let's take a bit of a breather to let it all sink in.
Excuse me, Daniel.
We have a question for Daniel.
Yes.
Yes, please go
Hey.
ahead.
Can I personally get your website, because I have a couple of therapists that work with autistic individuals, and I'm sure that they would love to see your website.
Hello, Daniel. You there?
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, my internet was it's terrible right now. I do apologize. So were you asking for my website link? Is that what I gathered was? Yeah.
Yes, but due to my disability, I can't read my chat.
Okay.
So, could you find me on LinkedIn?
Yeah, definitely. If how can I do this? If I can take
So,
your name, I can find you on LinkedIn, and then I can send you a. So what's your LinkedIn name?
Creed Leffler.
Just unit. So Creed Leffler.
Yes.
Excellent. I will add you on LinkedIn and send you a message with the website address in there that is clickable. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And I would love to work with you on a couple of projects.
Yeah, certainly.
If
I'm
we
always open
can
to it.
work it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, dude.
You're welcome.
This is Michael Rogers, and first of all, I want to thank you for being there, and yes, take a nap after we're done. But I wanted to ask you about. I have dyslexia, which is obviously you can't see it, but I also have cerebral palsy, so I get the point of not seeing something, and I just appreciate this poem.
Thank you so much, Michael. And we're glad to have you here. Thank you so much for speaking out, for people who can't. Yeah. Thank you. We have a question from Swaroop in the chat box. Is there a pressure on people with invisible disability to acquire a visible disability? I think Tania touched on this earlier. Does it make them more vulnerable, a sense of relief if they get one? Interesting.
I would say, so for me, I've had both for the same amount of time. For me, they've been really concurrent. So one has always been more visible than the other. So my back pain and everything that I've gone through has been very, very visible and like very obvious to see and sense. And RA has always been invisible. And, you know, for me, it's a sense of anxiety that one day my RA will become visible because, it can lead to like irreparable joint damage and things like that. And obviously the medication you take is in hopes of preventing all of that. And RA also has like lots of other pretty horrible consequences down the line. If it's left untreated, it can affect your heart and lungs and things like that. So I don't know. It's a strange kind of I don't know how to put the feelings exactly, articulate them, but but I did have that strong realization of having my surgery last year, and I'm still kind of recover. Like I look physically perfectly fine now, but there are still lingering effects that I'm dealing with, and things that I'm still kind of getting through. And in terms of, I'm a dancer, and I still am not anywhere near back to where I was. I don't know if I'll ever be back to where I was. But, you know, it was a very distinct thing of like, oh, when it's visible, people do sympathize more with you. And that was a very disheartening realization, you know, but that's kind of what my thoughts are on that.
People need proof. It's that,
That's exactly what it seemed like.
yeah, cognitive dissonance. I guess also in relation to Katie's and Daniel's disability of topic, autism and alexithymia. These are more mental, right? So rather than physical, as compared to Nellie's and Tanya's. What are your what is your take on this question? Neurological. I stand corrected. Neurological.
Yeah, well, it's like having a disability that's in your neural networks, in your wiring, that could get interrupted at any point and take you offline, is incredibly disabling. And I mean, until I understood what was happening in my system when I was getting interrupted in situations, particularly public speaking situations like right now, you know, I could go offline any moment. But it feels very disabling, and then so I would avoid situations where I would be standing up in front of people or speaking in front of people. So it's always a big deal for me, any kind of speaking in front of people, in case I have this trauma response come in and interrupt what's happening. And it's a lonely kind of private, there's something wrong with me, I'm flawed kind of feeling that I've had, and then actually understanding that it's normal, that it's a normal response to trauma, and understanding what's happening in my brain, because I specialize in affective neuroscience, so I've really understood what's happening in the brain and the nervous system, and that's helped me overcome that. And that's what I teach people that I'm working with. So if we understand our mechanics, if you like, we're no longer victim to those mechanics when they get upset or interrupted or stop working. Yeah, so it's lonely having an invisible disability, that you don't understand yourself and other people don't understand either, and all you experience is going offline in situations where you want to be connected. It affects identity quite profoundly, and belonging and agency.
It does. It's so hard to describe because it's inside you, and perhaps, I guess we touched on this earlier, people just choose to assume. But thanks to everyone in this panel, you know, we get to learn step by step how to go back to the very beginning and, you know, love and accept ourselves first, then other people. Thank you. Okay, Daniel, how about you? Before I move on to the meat of this panel.
Sure. You know, one of the interesting things is that autism is always obviously seen as an invisible disability, and people just assume that you're kind of being rude, or you're being arrogant. And people for many years said I was arrogant, right? And I was like, what? And they said, well, you know, you speak in conversations with people very, like, you know, in an arrogant tone and all this rubbish. I had no idea, you know, I have no idea what that even means. But there is some breakthrough in the UK where we have something called the Sunflower Lanyard scheme, where you can, or one can wear a lanyard to present themselves with an invisible disability. So if you're in a shopping mall or an airport, this lanyard is notable because for anybody else, it'll be like, okay, this person's wearing a lanyard with a, you know, sunflowers on it, whatever. But the staff who are trained in it will say, this person needs extra help because they have an invisible disability, which is great because it's like having a visible disability without everybody, like, you know, without wearing a sign.
Right.
Good things, but the sunflower lanyard is fantastic, and I'm actually working with them to try and introduce this into the United States it slowly but surely we are doing this. But it does present some difficult issue when people can't visibly see that you're on the autism spectrum. Apart from if you have a meltdown in public, which has happened a few times, and it's not good. And there are times when people say, "What is going on?" I was in a car crash once and I had an excessive meltdown, and it was horrible, and they had to call an ambulance. And but then people don't understand what's going on, and you start stimming and things are quite difficult. So yeah, I just wanted to add in there that the Sunflower Lanyard scheme is apparent in the UK, and we are trying to move it into the US.
Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Does Michael want to say anything?
I just wondered the lady that does hugs, and that when I did it, when I've done that, and it really did help a lot. But I was just curious because of COVID, how's that? I mean, how does that work? Because we can't see each other. So I was just thought I'd ask that.
So how does it work right now during COVID times? Yes.
So I've been working as a cuddleist, and COVID has made that work very difficult to do. I do offer a little bit of online connection, so being able to provide that kind of emotional support and connection. Me personally, I have one client with spina bifida who, because of his disability and life circumstances, has been very isolated. So he is a client that we've kind of worked it out that we're still seeing each other to do sessions. But other than that, I know that it's really hard. I kind of put together a document about, especially for those of us that might be living alone during COVID, ways that we can kind of simulate and get some of our touch sensation needs met. So whether that be wrapping up in a bunch of blankets, kind of heavy blankets, a weighted blanket. One of the things that I've done is taking, if you're able to take a bath, to take a full-size towel into the bath with you and pull that up over top of you, and you've got the weight of the wet towel on top of you and the kind of pressure of the water that you're in. So those are just kind of some ways of being able to stimulate your skin and kind of have that sort of sensation that can help to calm the nervous system down a bit. But it's definitely, COVID has made touch something that's much more difficult to access. Hopefully we can get through this sooner rather than later.
Thank you. That's an amazing piece of advice, I think. Just trying to manufacture the feeling of the cuddle, because we need that. I think I'm going to try that in a while. Thank you. Thank you, Nellie. And in line with that, I'd like to ask the panelists, can you describe your experiences with love, sex, and intimacy amidst the pandemic, amidst the invisible disabilities, amidst the pain, amidst the neurological factors? Yeah, anyone can begin, can chime in.
Well, am I okay to start?
Yeah, please.
Girls, I don't want to. Yeah. I realise I'm the only gent on this panel as well, and surrounded by such beautiful women. Right. So I would just like to say that in the COVID kind of thing is really, really interesting. One thing I noticed is that people always like to look exterior for things. So when we're thinking about relating to anything, we're thinking exterior. So we judge things on, oh, that person's wearing a mask, oh, we're not allowed to go into that shopping mall, or we're not allowed to go to that store. And the external stimuli create an internal crisis But when we look internally, we create this feeling of peace and self-awareness again, and reconnecting with ourselves. But we don't stop to have internal kind of realizations because we're too busy and too stimulated by external stimuli, because that's the world we've created around ourselves. The thing I've noticed most about love and relationships and sex in particular is that when COVID happened, when the lockdown first happened, you have this kind of rush, like, oh, we're locked indoors, now we can have sex whenever we want, kind of thing. And it was great fun. You know, you can put the blanket down in the living room, put Netflix on, and you know, you have a really fun weekend ahead of you. But then it kind of starts to be, well, we're 6 months in and we haven't been anywhere other than our house, and we can't even see our families. And that mental health issue of this isolation of, hey, this is a reality and this is not the world we realize, becomes something called hypernormalization. And that hypernormalization then creates an almost depressive state, and your libido or sex drive completely diminishes. Like, we went through, I'm pretty sure there was like 2 weeks where I couldn't even think about sex at all. It was just like, oh, that's it. I focused all on work because I had to focus my mind on something that was work, because work was external stimuli pleasure, because I love the work I do, right? And so I had to find a kind of vice within work to work from 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night to find this pleasure. Whereas with sex, because it's an internal, almost like a spiritual connection with somebody, when you're engaging in sexual intercourse, it's more of a deeper connection. So I feel like COVID is initially sparked a crazy good connection with people, where you have a spike of people going, well, hey, now we can just have sex because, you know, whatever, you know, we don't have to go to work at the moment. We just log online and we'll go on Skype for a couple of hours, and it was great. It was good fun. But then you have the other side of this wave. If you think about it in wave frequencies, you have the top peak of the wave where COVID hit, and you had all this great intimacy because we're all at home, and you know, partners are spending time at home with each other. Great. But then it completely hit rock bottom when you've had such a good intimate section of the COVID experience, but then you have this well of, oh, this is reality now, you know, and that and the compare and contrast in your mind as well. Not only the pressure of COVID, not only the mental health state, but then you have the, wow, you know, 3 months ago we were having sex every couple of hours, and now it's nothing, you know, for weeks. So I think that it's definitely having a crazy impact. But what I would say on this is that finding time, putting time away, to saying like every Wednesday we're going to do date night and we're going to do something special, you know, we're going to do massages or something, or we're going to light some candles, or we're going to get intimate. And I know it sounds a bit weird, like planning sex, right? But I think that I love schedules because I'm autistic, but in terms of having a planned time where you will say to yourself, right, me and my girlfriend, we're going to have intimacy today, I think gives you that time, because there's nothing wrong with having the intimacy. It's just making sure that you remember to do it, I think is the issue here. But I'd love to hear everybody else's opinion on it.
Daniel, yeah, I think you brought up a very interesting point, because so I am, you know, like I said, you know, with having an autoimmune condition, I have been extremely isolated, you know, and I've been very lucky because this is my apartment. My parents are like 45 minutes away. So I've been able to spend time back and forth. So I have like another space to go to, but I have not seen most of my friends. I've gone on a couple dates here and there. But it's been, and you know, in the summertime, like I did a lot of gardening at my parents, and you know, grew lots of vegetables and flowers, so like that very much kept me occupied. But the one thing I kind of realized is like, you know, I don't feel sexy anymore, like, you know, and it kind of suddenly like hit me a couple months ago, where I was like, wait, like this is very different for me, you know, as someone who you know, even when I'm not seeing anyone, always feels very like in my body, in my element. Generally, you know, it took me a long time to be very comfortable with who I am and what I look like and everything like that. And I was like, wait, like, did I lose that? What happened? You know, and I was talking to one of my best friends, and then, you know, read up a bunch of stuff and things like that. And I realized like it's okay if during COVID you're not feeling the most sexy, you're not feeling that connection with yourself or with people around you, because there's just so much going on. And you know, especially currently in the US, the political climate, I mean, you know, and then like California is on fire, and you know, there's the election is in less, you know, just, you know, a couple of weeks from now, and there's just a lot going on. And I was like, it's okay to, you know, kind of be in this state where like you're a little overwhelmed and there's too many things going on around you and you're not necessarily feeling like yourself. But so that's kind of a very interesting realization that I had. And I was like, oh, okay, I
Tanya,
guess, you know, it's finally kind of affecting how I feel.
can I just, you just brought up something really interesting, Tanya. Sorry, I hate to butt in again,
No
so
problem.
please forgive me, everybody. Is
No
that, you know,
problem.
you said that you haven't been on many dates, and I thought this. About 2 weeks ago, I was walking my dog around the duck pond where we live, and then I was thinking to myself, goodness me, there's a lot of, you know, young adults in my area who were outgoing, and they go to clubs and pubs, and I see them all the time. And some of my friends on posting on social media, and they have a good time, and they go home with each other, and etc. I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's a lot of young person hormones that are not getting dealt with, you know. And I suppose there's only so much porn these people can watch before it becomes like a mental state where they go, wow, this is unstimulating for me, you know. And then you don't want to be reliant on video stimuli. But it's a really interesting point you said about not going on dates. You got to think about the single people who maybe were just, you know, they don't want to be in relationships and they want just casual sex. And how on earth are these people supposed to go out and find casual sex in a place where, you know, everyone's stand 2 meters any closer than 2 meters to somebody? It's just impossible. I mean, let alone, you know, it's not going to happen, you know. So I just find that COVID is really pushing the boundary. And this is another thing: autistic people have difficulty socializing and social interaction anyway. Now you have added 2 meters and wearing a mask. Oh my goodness. And it's just so difficult to do. And one of the things that I would say is that autistic people like to look at people's mouths when they talk rather than their eyes. It's quite a difficult and intense thing to look in someone's eyes. So when you're wearing a mask and just 2 meters away from somebody, it's never going to happen, you know, for anybody. So people with hidden disabilities, I think we're getting a backhand slap to the whole sex and COVID thing, because it's never going to happen. You know, it's never going to happen. You're going to have a very dry 6 months, and where I'm living now, it's going to go back into another 3-month lockdown or something like that, because it's just getting worse. You know, I'm literally in the last 4 days, my sister, her partner, their 2 children, and my mum and my dad both tested positive for COVID. So it's a scary time here right now. Yeah, I'm in a very difficult situation where we are.
Absolutely. And, you know, for me, having an autoimmune condition, like the anxiety is so high, and which is why I have, you know, very calmly isolated myself, because I was like, I don't really have a choice and I need to do this for me, because if I do get sick, the consequences will be dire. But, you know, and then you know, I'm turning 31 on Halloween, and on, you know, my Indian mother, poor mother, is like, when are you going to get married? And I'm just like, it's COVID, Mom. That's my out for this year. Sorry.
I just wanted to chime in with this, is that, you know, for myself, and I have a number of people that I know that were already very isolated before COVID happened. And so there's a way in which I think some of the conversation in communities of people with disabilities who have already been isolated is that we're kind of the experts in how to do social distancing. You know, some folks that I know have already been super isolated because their health meant they couldn't risk getting a cold or flu even before COVID. And, you know, and that definitely has an impact on one's sex life. And I think one of the valuable things to think about is, what do we mean when we say sex? You know, because having a definition of what we're talking about is important. So, you know, there's like sexual engagement with another person, but then there's also sexual engagement with oneself. And masturbation has been something that I've found to be a really fundamental practice in again, knowing like what I like, what I don't like, but also that it holds a place for holds a place for connecting in with pleasure in my own body. I've gone through periods of having pelvic pain where even like touching my genitals was kind of like, nope, that does not feel good. And so it pushed me to explore what other parts of my body feel good. And I know, like, I had a partner for a little while who's quadriplegic, and for them, it was like, you know, the sensation was all in the head, around the shoulders, and around their thumbs. And that, you know, and so it's like, okay, like, where do we focus? Where do we play? Where do we put our attention and energy into, like, what feels good? And so you start to, it expands out the idea of sex, you know, like I think so many of us are brought up that sex equals penis and vagina. And there's so much more to sex than that, you know, like sex can be something that you aren't even touching a body, that it, like there's generating pleasure and ideas and things like that inside of our heads. And, you know, or maybe we're like exploring breathing in different ways to heighten sensation in our bodies. You know, like, and I feel like I've been on a journey over time with, you know, like having a lot of sexual desire and, you know, like having many lovers and exploring with that, and periods of time where I was by myself, and that felt like the right place for me to be at that time. And, you know, like definitely echoing kind of what Daniel and Tania were talking about is that stress is really a libido killer. And when there's intense stuff going on in the world, it can make it really hard to feel like turned on and sexy, and that's really okay. And that's where my interest in sensualness and in comforting touch and nurturing touch becomes part of that constellation of what sexuality can be, and having pleasure in a non-heightened stimuli sort of setting. So maybe what we actually want is we want to feel pleasure in our bodies that's really calming and soothing and nurturing. So like there's a lot to explore when you start questioning what does sex mean? What definition do I want to use? I see nodding heads. I'll let other people jump in.
And Nellie, I think, you know, what you said, what Daniel said, what we've all been saying, you know, intimacy is not just sex, right? It's not like genitals coming together. That's not the only definition of intimacy. And exactly what you said, you know, we have, I think, a very heteronormative view of sex, penis and vagina, and we don't look at other body parts. We don't think about other ways people have sex or other people having sex. We always think about, you know, two people. We don't think about one person or three people or more. You know, like there are so many other possibilities out there, right? And you know, things like talking about anal sex, still very taboo, and people think only gay people do anal sex, right? And that's not true at all, right? So there's so much shame and stigma, and there's just so much like around, you know, sex and intimacy, and like you can have intimacy between yourself and a partner or partners that's not to do necessarily with physical touch, or even if it's physical touch, it doesn't have to be sex. You know, cooking together can be intimacy, cuddling together, or having a massage. Like there's so many things. And I think maybe for people who are isolated together and feel like they've lost that spark because maybe they're not having sex as often. It's like redefining what that intimacy means, right? And I think that's something I've read we see in like older couples who've been together for a long time, where it's not necessarily about sex at that time, it's about all the other things that constitute a relationship. So there's a lot to explore out there.
Can I just chime in on something that Nellie said about masturbation? Do you know, I saw a fantastic video of an advocate. There's a woman talking about sexual health, and she does some really good videos. I think she's disabled. She's got like I think it's called a stoma bag, where she, well, anyway, but she does all this confidence stuff, and I love it. I love watching her content. Anyway, she had this really good idea. She said that, and I should have said this when I was talking earlier about it, but because of the whole COVID thing, people aren't coming together, and you're not meeting people, and she said that you could do like a self-pleasure evening, so that you can still have that day put aside where you light candles, you like maybe take a bath, and then you watch something that may be stimulating, or you listen to something that's stimulating, or do whatever it is that stimulates you, and then just have that time with yourself, explore your body, find out different parts that make you stimulate. Like, there's nothing wrong with masturbation, obviously, and have that experience with yourself. So you're still pleasuring yourself, you're still having that experience. And I think, Nellie hit it on the head, like there's no definition for what constitutes as sex or intimacy or being intimate. I think like it's just, you have to figure that out, and exploring it is going to bridge all those gaps. And I think something we can all take away from this is exploring more about it, since we have the time now, since we're all at home and the whole COVID thing is rampant right now. So yeah, why not? And I think it's something that we should all remember to do as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, COVID is the time for a lot of, self-reflection. It's like a forced retreat, right? So you might as well make the most of it if you can, by learning more about yourself and how, what makes you tick, basically. And I think we have a little over 5 minutes left, but Katie is a major expert in this. Please go ahead.
I was just going to recommend the Yoga of Sex that Joseph Kramer, who's my teacher, created, and it's a whole self-development exploration with self-pleasure, with being creative with what is pleasure, and it's self-practices, and he calls these practices orgasmic yoga practices. And when we know what brings us pleasure ourselves, we can then share that with somebody else potentially when that opportunity arises. But we can be lovers with ourselves. And yeah, this time of being in a forest retreat, it's a great leveler. In fact, we're all here together, isolating in our different configurations. And it's a time for creativity. And I love what you shared, Nellie and Tania, about stepping out of penis vagina, hot penis vagina sex, which is what mainstream pornography advertises as sex. And let's explore the full range. We have we're doing some practice with our students at the moment with masturbation practice, and the students are witnessing each other in their masturbation practice, and learning to self-reflect and overcome shame, and expand capacity to be in pleasure, and accept that as a birthright. This is my birthright for pleasure, and pleasure means different. We all have our different routes to pleasure, and wheel of consent practices on Zoom can be really pleasurable. We can play with our mirror neurons with each other. If I stroke my cheeks and you stroke your cheeks at the same time, we're stroking our cheeks together, and we can be resonating together, and brings us together, all doing the same thing. And we're actually feeling that connection, even though we're geographically, in different parts of the world. So yoga of sex, orgasmic yoga practices, they're just inspirational. to start you off, and you can create your own orgasmic yoga practices. And Joseph loves hearing from people who've created orgasmic yoga practices, and then they get added to the catalogue for other people to be inspired by too.
Thank you, Katie. So you got that, guys. Yoga for sex, that's both for the body, the mind, and the spirit. Okay? I'm going to look at that up too. Okay, so time flew. We are actually almost at the end of our panel. I guess I'd just like to close with this last question for my panelists, unless anyone else wants to chime in. I want to ask, what is your love ability? Okay, branding for the festival. And this could be like maybe your message, something that you stand for, parting words, or like a wild card item. Any. And anyone can begin, please.
I'll say that I'm at heart, I'm a creative, and that, colors every aspect of my professional, personal, creative lives. So that's my love ability.
I'll do this one, and I'm somewhat on the same lines, like like finding love or feeling love is true happiness, and true happiness brings you everything in life. Everything is secondary to actual happiness, and I am so happy when I'm doing my work. So I love what I do, brings me happiness, and I'm going to continue to do it until the end, really. So yeah, just love what you do, because you'll find true happiness.
Can I throw in one?
Yes, go ahead, please. I was going to read yours.
I think my lovability is the connection with somebody. So pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, it can be in person and it's just the holding, but then almost going into the tantra thing of the breathing and feeling really connected physically, and the healing power of touch. But then also with my SWAD hat on, so the professional side of things, is the ability to make people feel comfortable when they're talking about really personal stuff, so that they can then heal. I think that's probably, yeah. But that's a brilliant question. I'd never thought of that before.
Thank you. And it's funny how the pandemic taught us how important the breath is, the touch is. They're normal everyday things, and to have them taken away tips the world at the balance, right? How about Katie and Nellie before we end?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the Joni Mitchell song. You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this time for coming into like really feeling what matters to me as a human being, having had freedom taken away, for many people, freedom taken away. For others, they've known, it's a great leveler. It's a great leveler for people that have not had the freedom from the start there, and that's where the expertise is in with self practices and being creative with a limited range of possibilities available. It makes it more valuable. Every connection's more valuable. Yeah.
Thank you. That's right. Every connection is more valuable, and unfortunately for now, it has to be online connection first. But it has a lot of good things also. Okay. So how about Nellie? What is your love ability?
I would say that my love ability is a lot of curiosity. I'm just holding curiosity about things, and also having an open heart that I really like to welcome things in and hold them with curiosity. So that's and with curiosity comes playfulness as well, which I think is also a really valuable aspect of engagement with sex and creating pleasure in one's life, is to be playful and curious, and it'll come forth in your life, sometimes in really unexpected ways.
Thank you, Nellie. That's right. Play starts with curiosity, starts with the will to explore and learn more about yourself. So, yeah, that's the end of our panel. I guess I should answer that question also. I have people asking, what is Joyen's love ability? It's a mix of all of these, but ultimately, and in this specific festival, it's bridging the gap between I guess what we have here in Asia and what there is in the West, where my panelists are. It's never stopping to learn about, I guess, the taboo or the awkward things in life, whether it's got something to do with being a woman of color, a very sexual woman of color in Asia. It's about openness. It's about love. And that's what I ultimately keep repeating in this panel with my beloved panelists. Again, I have Katie, Tania, Nellie, and Daniel, and myself in this panel. You can look up our profiles in the website. You can ask us questions later on through Martha. Oh, yeah, I think.
Very quickly.
Oh, yes, yes, go ahead.
My love ability is learning. My love ability is learning.
Learning.
Yeah.
Same. So we're the same.
Yay.
Yeah, we're the same. And you know what? It's learning is such a humbling process, isn't it? But at the same time, it makes you into a greater person, ultimately, a greater human being. So that's ultimately what I want this panel to say. And it did. So we're a little bit over time, 5 minutes over time, but that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating, for asking questions, for my panelists at whatever time in the world you are. Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch on the Facebook group. And if Martha, do you have anything else to add before we end? I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Yes, so I want to thank JOYEN for doing such a great job. I'm sure all of you agree she's fantastic.
Martha.
Don't, yes, Craig.
What is your love ability?
What is your love ability, Martha?
My love ability, I don't know, lightheartedness. Yeah. I mean, I'm very serious about my work, super serious, as all of you can tell, super on time. But when it comes to sex, I also believe sex should be fun. So somehow it just comes through somehow. So I think that's my superpower. Even though I'm very serious about something, I can also be quite lighthearted about it. So it's like this dichotomy that I'm straddling. Okay, so we have to end the panel. I'd like to thank JOYEN for doing such an excellent job managing time and ensuring everybody got to speak, and the diversity of topics. I couldn't do it, and I'm very happy to get the best people that we can for every session that we have had, and also very happy to put together this amazing panel, and of course super happy to have the one representative for the autism spectrum. I don't know what I would have done if Daniel, you said no, because I really looked. It was hard to get somebody who was really comfortable to put themselves out there and who was also eloquent to talk about this area of their life. And as you can tell, the audience really resonated with you, Daniel. So I just want to be very, very clear, because I think some people are confused. When I say that you shouldn't contact participants outside of the festival, I do not mean you cannot contact the presenters. Yeah, the presenters are different. You know, they are putting themselves out there because they are brave and they have done a lot of work on themselves. So feel free to connect with the presenters. Okay, so with that, I'm going to end the recording and I will have some announcements. So please remember to fill up the feedback form if you like to, if you can. You don't have to, but we'd love to hear from you. Okay, and